Hello and welcome to this Instagram Live with the incredible Mina Aidoo. She has so willingly agreed to join me for a discussion about pleasure and to also be able to help me to share about this offering a group program called the Pleasure Temple. She's here, yay. Let me just, I should have this memorized by now. Let me just share a little bit about Mina Aidoo. So she's a mama artist and a trauma resolution practitioner. Her journey involves turning down a major West End world tour in order to find herself, drinking plant medicine, shaving her head, learning all about sexual, oh my goodness, learning all about sacred sexuality and releasing a book of poetry. Her debut anthology, Inky Black Women, went to #1 on the Amazon. Oh my gosh, today I just need to take a moment. It's just been so hectic. On the Amazon African Literature chart, she helps women and femmes to heal via the body, helping them release past trauma, including childhood, generational, and ancestral trauma. Yes, such important work. So they can overcome depressive states and behavioral patterns that are keeping them stuck and step into their true magnificence, their authentic pleasure. She offers one-on-one sessions and the Black Women Somatic practice group, which is underway, which is a space specifically created for Black women and femmes to be together in health and wholeness. Let me bring her on. Here we go. Yes. Hey! Oh my gosh, it is so good to see you. I love everything. I feel the pleasure vibe.
Mommy just got her hair done.
Oh, it looks amazing.
Literally, I just finished a couple of hours ago, so it is fresh hair vibes that you're getting. So you are welcome.
I was gonna say I feel so privileged, yes. To behold the beauty fresh from the salon.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so good to be here with you. I was stumbling left, right, and center trying to share your bio, which I really should know. Word for word by now. Oh my gosh. And all these craziness was happening just before. So, and I know I got out a few minutes late, but here we are. This is the thing about pleasure, is that we get to slow down.
Oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes, we do. It's just been one of those days, right? Just sort of naming that and acknowledging that and being like, yeah, it's cool. It's one of those days, and that's
I was thinking about last time how we were just going and, weaving and flowing, and you're like, maybe it would be good if we had some questions. Pisces can just like, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm an Aries.
Yes.
So
Yes, sweet.
I'm like, just like, I can flow. I love to flow. And also, maybe we should have some questions sometime.
Oh, yes, that was so good. And I have to share that clearly I was following your lead. Clearly I'm not used to asking. I don't ask questions of my audience, like hardly at all. And I realize I need to do that more. I also appreciated following your lead and seeing, you know, how you were going about it. Because first I just posted our thing and I said, ask me something. I'm like, that really didn't work. But also just to share that having been in this for a while, I know I'm aware of common questions that come up, but I really didn't get any questions and I tried. And I also was sharing, like yesterday, just real quickly, I was sharing about, it was my brother's birthday. You know, he passed away like 22 years ago now. And so I was sharing all that. So I got a lot of response, like feedback, people, you know, commenting or offering or whatever, but no, I got no pleasure questions on my end. So I am glad that you got some and that we can just
Full exposure, full transparency.
I'm being so I could have made some up. I was just like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. And then right before we were coming on live, I get, because my mother's not on social media. My father is on Facebook. And I'd shared to Facebook and Instagram. And I get a message in like, not to the question, but just to the little video. And he wrote, "Hi, nice to see you." I thought, doesn't this just say it all? Like, if my brother were alive, that I'm posting to the whole world, or whoever can see it, that's not the whole world, whatever, but not the whole world's not watching it, but all about pleasure, talking about this offering, asking about burning pleasure questions. And then my dad's like, hey, an 83-year-old father. And I thought, gosh, this is a moment. This is like all the different parts of me, all the different parts of my world is like, oh, yeah. So, this is it.
Let's give thanks.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I know you've gotten some questions. Should we start with those? Or do you want to just chat? Okay. Yes.
Yes. I want to start. And you know what I want to do? I want to say hi to Faced by Fire. Hey, thanks for joining us. I love saying hello to people.
Oh, I love that name actually, Faced by Fire. Yes.
And like I am no pleasure expert, right? I am on my journey. Is the plant trying to eat you?
It is. It is going to like swallow me.
Your face. You were like,
it wants some airtime, and I'm like, hey, you don't get the whole screen.
your face was like,
like over there. It's too much.
Faced by fire. If you come for pleasure, feel like this is it. We're in pleasure right now. This is the lesson.
Oh yes, faced by fire. If you have a question for us, please feel free to share. We will not be laughing the whole time. But it's just one of those.
But we might do. I don't know. Yes. So, you know what I would love? I am not a pleasure expert. I'm on my own journey with pleasure. And I think I've learned a lot. Like, I was sharing in my stories that for people who may have grown up in an environment of survival, there wasn't much ease or space or sense of belonging, or who didn't see models of people in pleasure around them. Like, this was me. And so it was like when I got into the online space and I started to talk about pleasure, I was like, I don't understand what it is. Like, the wording around it made it seem like it was this thing I was like trying to get access to that was external. But actually, it's just something really, it's perfect. It's something we all have access to, right?
Absolutely.
But there was this big sort of like thing around the word pleasure for me, and I only associate it with sexual pleasure, which I think is a big sort of misconception around the word pleasure, right? Because we only tend to hear it in that. If we hear it at all, we hear it in combination with like sexual pleasure.
Yes.
So I was just very like, I don't know what it is. I don't have access to it. If you mean like sexual pleasure, okay, but it's like it's very, that was all it did. And it just seemed like this external thing I was trying to get access to. So I had a lot of sadness, a lot of like emotions around being able to access pleasure, which I think a lot of people do.
Yes.
Especially like having a spectrum. And so I wondered if you could like just start there, really, maybe talk about, I feel like I'm interviewing you, talk about like your experience and with pleasure, and maybe some of the touch points for people who feel like they might not have access to pleasure, who are starting from that place.
That's a beautiful place to start. Thank you for that. I think it's, I mean, first of all, yes, we are bombarded with images and pleasure. When the word pleasure comes up, it is often connected to sexual pleasure. And then that's very charged, however that will look. And what is interesting, as you pointed out in your own journey, for me as well, it's almost like what is coming to me is that I'm not going to get it right, but the Rumi quote, or what he said about love, like you're not seeking for love, you're just removing or like releasing all the barriers that have stood in the way of love, and I think pleasure is so much like that. It's not outside of us, and it's not something, and it is definitely, and this is where I think for me and for many people that I have encountered in this work, we think of it like a goal. We think of it as something to work towards. We think of it like we're over here and pleasure is somewhere else, and we're like taking all these steps in a very, I mean, it reeks of the patriarchy, right? It's like we've got to take these steps, do this, do that, do this, and then we can experience pleasure. And in essence, it really has nothing to do with that. It's here within us. The experience of pleasure is ours. It always has been. And what we do, hello, Missy.
I was telling them as well.
Thank you all. Our role, it's so much more in the, I want to say, feminine way, or yin, as soon as we think of it, that yin energy with the yin and yang. This comes up for me so much in this work of working with, we have both. We have both, and we need both, and keeping them in balance. But it is the surrender aspect. It is the allowing. It is the full openness to the experience of pleasure, and also as part of the process, then it becomes our responsibility to look at what is and what has stood in the way of our experience of pleasure. And that is really where a lot of this lies, as it did for me. It was like, oh, what's in the way? And there was so much. There was so much. And a lot of it was, I know a lot of it was mental, rational, like an awareness upon taking the step, like actually going. Like I'll share, when I really took a big step was when I was living in Sri Lanka. I had left my job for the time being. I thought just temporarily, but I left. I was living in Sri Lanka, pursuing Ayurveda, and I had this choice between going to India to study with a renowned Ayurvedic practitioner, or going to Mexico and to with the teacher that I worked with, Layla Martin, to go to Mexico. And her retreat was called Wild Bliss. And I took that after so much angst around it all. Like, no, I need to go to India. This makes sense. No, I came to do this. So I say that because there is often an invitation that we will have to take a step, to actually claim and say, this is important. I'm going to do this. I want to experience this. I'm going to prioritize this. It doesn't, so even though I'm saying surrender, allow all of this, right? That is part of the process, but it's not a passive process. It is, for me anyway, and for so many, I feel like there is a point where we do need to actively claim it. We don't really have to do anything. We certainly don't have to, you don't have to go on a retreat. You don't have to do my program. You don't have to do any of those things. You do need to claim it. And then allow the steps to show, like, okay, where do you need help with it? Where do you need maybe some support? Where would a community be helpful? Like, these are the things then that might show up. And again, we get to, it's always our responsibility, our choice. Do we say yes? Or do we go about doing what we've been doing? I did that for some decades, I didn't think about pleasure. God only knows. Like, I don't think that was anywhere on my radar, honestly, for so long. Until, I said yes. Okay, Wild Bliss. I was freaked out, got there, like, had no idea what to expect. And I remember my teacher saying something about, like, you don't just, this isn't, and here she had called this whole retreat Wild Bliss, but she didn't explain, like, you're not going after it to get it. This is about finding it within you and being in that state of being willing to release what is showing up. Like, we look at it, we hold it, we tend to it, because it can be very tender. as you mentioned, so many of us, this isn't something that we grew up around, that we have any role model for in any kind of healthy way, that we were ever given any message that we were worthy of this, we were deserving of this, that this was ours to experience. So it's like that. So it's a flow. I think of, even in this program that I'm offering, and in the process, like, I love this word undulate. I just feel like it's a waves, and we kind of, there is this, take a stab, we see what's there. Like sometimes there's something big that shows up. Certainly if we've experienced any kind of trauma that's held in our body, that is, especially sexual trauma, that will show up, and it'll be like alarm bells going off in our body, you know. And so you can't, it's not a push through, it's not a, okay, next step and next step and next step. It's attending to these undulating like waves as they come, and with the idea of allowing more, surrendering more, releasing more, being more in this state of pleasure.
It's like marinating in that, allowing, surrendering. That's just like, yes, please. And like, there's so many things that come up from what you said. So many things. And like the end part, like immediately for the people that I work with, it's like, oftentimes that can feel really scary.
Yes. And as you've mentioned a couple of times, that body security system, you've mentioned, like, that's so important. And if it feels scary, okay, we don't need to push through anything. No, we need to tend to what feels scary, what has led to whatever the experience is now to feel scary, or the process to feel scary, and how do we tend to, like, some of the deeper layers so that we create more safety in the body. Because otherwise, yeah, it's done. I mean, not like done, like there's no hope, but you can't push through that. Or should I say you can? I wouldn't recommend it.
Like, as I've been on my journey, it feels like the more capacity is built in the body, you're able to allow, surrender and be with what's there. And it feels like there's thresholds to it. There's thresholds. And it's just important to really honor the thresholds. And it's like, it can be about pushing through, and recommending pushing through. It's like, I think it's really a dance. It's like, I wouldn't recommend pushing through either. And there are times in my journey where it's been like, okay, how am I feeling today? It's like that sort of dance between, do I want to, am I in my choice to see, or is it not today? It's this kind of dancing with it, when it feels possible for this capacity to play in that space. But it's definitely a journey to sort of get to that place where you can be with yourself enough to know how I'm going to play in space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is a big piece of this process that is about creating that self-trust, right? Like, so that, because that helps work with your own sense of safety, like that trust, that the trust that you're going to listen to your body. The trust that you're going to honor what comes up, so that like that trust is built. Because for so many of us, that is also like, there have been issues there where we've made choices, or we've had experiences, or things haven't gone, whatever, like where we don't even trust ourselves enough to be on this, but when we have the trust, and there's a very much that clear connection with the body, like of us saying, like, I'm not going to go anywhere you don't want to go. I'm not going to go anywhere we're not ready to. I'm going to listen to whatever comes up. That takes some time sometimes, but it's like, if you have that, it makes the process much easier, because then you can really go, if you don't feel like doing any kind of pleasure or anything, it's fine. Do something else, or just focus on, like, we were talking about other kinds of pleasure, right? Just our senses, just eating something or taking in something just with our eyes, listening to something, touching our body in a certain way, just things that we can just get back to just I say sensual pleasure, but sensual pleasure also often for many people think is sexual, but I feel it like the senses, right? Just what we enjoy with the senses.
Yes, yeah, for sure. There's so many things that are like, oh, ask this, say this, oh, I'm trying to like filter myself in. Hi Jaha, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you. So I want to say, taking it back to the senses. So I literally remember thinking, I used to hear about people talking about pleasure, and they would say, I get so much pleasure from feeling the sun on my face. And at the time, I was like, so hang on, you're standing outside having orgasms because the sun's on your face. That was literally how my brain was interpreting it. I was like, I don't think I get that. That never happened to me. But now, like, it's literally the basics of this thing, because I did not grow up like seeing having pleasure modeled to me. It was nowhere in my experience. It was nowhere in my life. It was nowhere in my face at all. And my parents both worked jobs. They were in a foreign country. They were not doing that. Or the version I saw was maybe like having a drink or watching TV. That's the version I saw. Nothing wrong with that. And there is pleasure can be medicine, a kind of medicine.
Yes.
And so when we're able to get to a place where we can tap into pleasure as medicine, that's where I find it gets really regenerative and nourishing and those things, right? And sprinkle the rest in there. Any pleasure you have access to is pleasure. Feel pleasure, brilliant. And pleasure, there is layers to this that I want to name. And I think as a child growing up, not really seeing pleasure, a pleasure medicine that I could take with me into my adult life in a way that's going to regenerate and nourish me. It was just like, we were not. So to understand that pleasure is on a spectrum, and to find like ways one can begin, and understanding that it's like, can start like zero, it's like, and it could be, okay, how could you be like 1%, 2%, 3% more comfortable right now? And that could be the way to pleasure.
Yes.
And it was when I started hearing in this sort of like area, this is the spectrum of pleasure, when I was like in this area here, just doing those micro things, it was like mind blowing. Because then that opened the gate, that kind of increased my awareness of pleasure for me, and I started to really understand and open up to sort of more and more and more. And so that has been like, yeah, understanding pleasure on a spectrum has been such a useful thing to take it out of, just sort of slice sexual pleasure, to make it deeper, to sort of see the build up, the patterns, and see like what can be included in the pleasure spectrum.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love that. So beautiful and such. It speaks to what we were talking about before about safety of it, and because sexual pleasure is so charged, and there's so many messages around it, and there's so much shame and blame and all kinds of things around it. It takes away from that. It releases out of it to just focus on like simple pleasures, just little things. Like it's just like, let's take little sips of pleasure, sips from like the ocean of pleasure. That's sort of just sips. We'll just take a little bit in, a little bit in, and a little bit more. And it is kind of like I think about this for different things, but for this also kind of like flexing a muscle. Just start moving, allowing movement through the muscle of pleasure, just like do little things, and it does then allows for more. It allows for more and more and more. Yeah, so I think it's so good to think about it that way, and that's how that you experience it. I have experienced similar as well. Just once I started to focus more on pleasure, or bring my awareness to it, prioritize it, and then it did become, this is even about like, where do I want to live? What do I want to be doing? Like, there's nothing to do with sex, but just more like pleasure. What would be most pleasing? What do I want? And I think it gets at something that has actually, it's been there for a while, but even more recently come into my awareness about, what do we desire? What do we desire? Like just even to allow that in, because for many of us, for myself, for sure, there's a lot of blocks, because even to think about what I desire, like already they'll be, oh, you can't have that, that's too much, or that's this, or that. There's a lot of the conditioning that just starts to show up to tell me that, to even prevent me from going there. Like, what do I really desire? And I think that this all gets intertwined, it's like, as we start to allow little things, the sun on the face, just like the smell of flowers, just like little, like we allow these sensual experiences that can bring pleasure. We also slowly, well, perhaps slowly, perhaps not, but for me it was slowly, allow more and more permission to even consider what I was desiring. What would bring me pleasure? Like, this can be so expansive, yet for me, like I even said, I didn't even think about it. I knew what I needed to be doing. I was a student, and then I was a student for a very long time, and then I was like doing the next thing and the next thing, and I knew kind of rationally, like, these are the steps I needed to take. And I'm not saying I didn't enjoy things or I didn't have like these experiences, but it was not a priority. The priority was, what do I need to do next? And kind of moving in that way until that pattern takes us to a place where, took me to a place where I had lost so much touch with what did I want? What did I want? What did I desire? Nothing to do with what would bring me pleasure. I was way out in a different, continent or something from where pleasure was. I had found myself just step by step doing all these things, and oh gosh, I really didn't follow anything that was somewhere, I can't even see it, but connected to my heart, what I really wanted. So it can seem I know for me, pleasure would have seemed like a frivolous thing, which is probably why I didn't ever focus on it. Whatever that is, I have things to do, Yeah, things to do. I got important work to do. Till that led to complete burnout and oh my god, and now I need help. But I think it all the pleasure allowing, because of that process, it relates them to our whole lives. From morning till evening, we have a choice to choose pleasure. We have a choice. It becomes our responsibility. Do we want pleasure? Do we want to take it in little ways? Or I'm not saying we don't work, but just in these ways we get to, there's certain decisions we get to make. And we get to invite it in more. And then that takes over. For me, that's definitely what happened. It's wait, I want more.
Yeah, I have to say, there's so much in what you said. So on the back of that, I kind of want to say three things of you thought they were. I want to say hi to Anna Bonner, and I want to say hi to I'm Alex, not Alice. Hey, thanks for joining us. You like saying hello to people?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
And so there's something here about three things. Okay, so something about, because I work with trauma resolution.
Yes.
There was a piece which is about starting. If you're wanting to start, hey, Missy, if you're wanting to start this journey, but there is some journey of embodiment that needs to happen first. You don't have to start with the body. Start externally and sort of begin there. Because I know at the beginning it was hard for me to access sensual pleasure. I was I don't know what that is. Right? I didn't feel like I had access to myself in the way. So as I've worked with clients, it's so you can actually start externally and build capacity to use and place. Something about being 2% more comfortable starts to touch.
What did you just say? Some reason, I'm sorry, I just feel like I'm not hearing, but I also have a fan. I'm trying to wait, no, what did you just say that? Sorry, the last part.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Now I can, yes.
Okay. For those who for those who don't have access to the body, but want to start experiencing pleasure, it's possible to start externally and bring it in that way. You don't have to go straight to the body, because body might not be accessible to us. So there are things you can do. Think about asking yourself occasionally, maybe even once a day, how could I be 2% more comfortable right now? Really valuable question, just to sort of it gives yourself, it gives you the signal that you matter enough to be comfortable, you know, on a really basic, not such a basic thing. Because I really want to speak to people who might not have access to pleasure, as it's spoken about in online spaces. That
Yes.
can be one external way, one basic way we can start. Another thing was, if you are from a background or a family or an upbringing where you were not encouraged or not taught about senses, you're, you're, you you learn to appreciate senses as innate. Just want to name that as a piece, um, because it can be a journey to learn to appreciate the sun on your face.
Yes.
Right? We feel like it's just a thing that we do, but for a lot of us who've experienced trauma in our childhood, it's not safe to be open enough to experience the outside world on going in towards your body.
Yes.
And so that's a piece I also want to name. And like unashamed, because it's actually it's common, you know. It can be a thing to learn to be in the senses. It's something that we can learn at any time. So a baby can learn. We can learn necessary as a way to access pleasure, huge access pleasure. And the third thing I wanted to say was just about pleasure is frivolous. And like for the longest time, all I was seeing, like I was getting triggered left, right, and center. All I was seeing was white women having pleasure. I was like, these white women out here lounging around in their pleasure with all their this and all their that and whatever and what have you. I'm out here, like, I don't have the support, I don't have the money, I don't have the this, I don't have the. I was triggered left, right, and center. And so I'm like, pleasure's for white women, not for me. And that's just like, you know, not so much now because I've been on a bit of a journey, but that, you know, that's what I was seeing in my eyes. I was seeing white women selling pleasure,
Mm.
and I'm just like, there's what's happening here. There are layers that are not being spoken about here. So I kind of want to put that out there and just, yes, I was triggered. I will admit that because I was in a place where I feel like I didn't have access to it, and there are layers that are not being talked about.
Yes. Oh, all of that was so good. um, I love going back to the first thing, the 2% comfortable. Like it just reminds me of, like, what could I do to feel 2% more comfortable, right? It reminds me of something that one teacher had mentioned, like a Japanese term called kaizen, where it's about, if you want to make a change, that taking the tiniest step, but just starting with a tiny shift. You want to wake up an hour earlier, like just wake up 5 minutes earlier first, like that kind of thing. It was for changing habits, really. But this idea of 2% more comfortable, to ask it is powerful, right? Just to ask it, just to give yourself, like, you're worthy and deserving enough to feel 2% more comfortable. What can we do? What can be done right now? And then we take the small steps, we help to mitigate the huge resistance that might be there. And that would come out if we took a huge step, because it would just shut down the whole process, right? The senses, I'm just appreciating the truth of that it is a really powerful safety mechanism, protective mechanism to prevent all that can come in through the senses, to prevent that like overwhelm and, you know, from situations, experiences, life experiences, family experiences where that would have been very harmful to like really let it all in with all of our senses, you know. And the protection, the really powerful, as you had been, I'm using your term now, the body security system. Yeah. That, you know, this idea of like our body is constantly trying to keep us in a place of safety. Like safety and protection is very important. And there's so much that we can do. We can shut down a lot of things in order to keep it, you know, manageable. And I do think these first two go together, where we get to choose maybe which sense to work with. A sense that might call, like maybe it is like taste, but just coming to me, you know. So like in that feeling of 2% more comfortable, I'm feeling like experiencing a little bit more pleasure we can take in from that sense, perhaps. You know, there's a lot of things that practices I've done where it's like bring your strawberries and your you know, your like grapes or chocolate or like whatever really entices the sense of taste, and let's like work with that. Let's just like, you know, and it does bring a lot, it kind of brings a lot of the senses on board, but in creating situations where it's controlled as much as possible. Like this practice, you get to choose. You don't have to do it. You know, always there's choice. But like just working with a sense like that. That was just coming to me. But you mentioned like, yeah, all the outside senses. It's really important to again, we have that trust. We have consent always. It's always at play. We have to ask ourselves, are we consenting to doing any kind of practice or anything at all? And if it's a no, it's a no. And that's fine. That's really actually very powerful, to honor the no, honor the yes, and to honor the no. Actually, that in itself goes to all depths of this kind of pleasure work. Is what is our yes? What is it? Do we know? Are we sure? What is our no? And how do we honor that? And last but not least, to all the white women flaunting their pleasure, touting their pleasure, telling everyone about pleasure. Oh my goodness. It's interesting because I'm so much more aware of all of this after having gone through at least the initial parts of my own pleasure journey. This is just my experience, that now when I see it, it is triggering. It is still triggering, even though I know and I get it, and you know, it's like pleasure is for everyone. Pleasure is a birthright. I experienced the I was going to say I experienced the lack of awareness of systemic oppression, and that how that has impacted pleasure and everything, you know, but pleasure being one thing, one aspect of it, and how it's not how there are systemic pieces that make it less accessible for those who are somehow in the experiencing the oppression of it. How this isn't named, this isn't something that comes up a lot, and it reminds me of just privilege.
And at the same time, though, it's like, I don't want to shame anyone for experiencing pleasure. It defeats the purpose, right?
Right.
So it's not about, there's no need for me to like call anything out, because like everyone should experience the maximum amount of pleasure that they want to experience. And
Yes.
we recognize that there are some populations or some people that have to do a lot of work, like to get to even a slice, or to be in that oppression, and to find it, and to look for it, to be able to have access to it, is huge. It's huge, 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 huge. And so I think it's just acknowledging and naming
Yes.
the journey that it can take
Yes.
when you're experiencing such pressure.
Yes. 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 And I'm, as always, I'm very appreciative of you not shaming, because I realized that it was coming out in my response, because there has been so much going through that and being in these spaces once I got more and more into these spaces. But it's true, it's not about shaming. I think that it is about awareness, and it is about it was part of what led for me to want to create a space where there is a bit more capacity to like hold what's coming up, and that it's not as triggering. Perhaps it's going to be triggering. It's going to be triggering in different ways, just because it is. It's anytime we're like diving in and going into the layers of what we're holding in our own bodies, from our own experience, our conditioning, and then all the other things, right? The ancestral, generational, systemic pieces. There's triggers in there, but just being able to have a space to, I guess, hold the exploration of all of this in a way that can feel, I guess the idea was to take away like that other layer that comes in when it is someone white who is presenting all of this, and say, hey, I'm in pleasure, you know what I mean? Oh, hi, Carrie.
Hi, TC.
TC. Carrie, yes. Oh, this is so good. We didn't answer any questions. I don't know. We probably...
Do you want to answer some questions?
We can answer some. Well, it is an hour. I don't know. What time do you... What's your time?
I have like up until 90 minutes. So.
Oh, wow. Hello, Carrie. Yeah.
What time do you have?
I have that as well. I don't... Yeah. I probably have... Oh, Natalia. Hello. Yeah, you choose a question. Okay.
Choose a question.
Yeah.
You had some great questions.
I'm so grateful that you did.
I'm like, if I press this button, am I going to come off? Okay, I'm going to go to the question, but my screen might come off.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
let's see what
I've
happens.
never had to, yeah. Okay. Might pause you for a moment. Oh, that's what it looks like is happening. So for anyone that's joined, we're just going to answer a few questions now after our little discussion about pleasure. Did you get it?
I have to come back on in a sec. Give me 1 sec. Let me get these questions.
Okay. This is all the tech. So we've been talking about pleasure, all kinds of aspects of pleasure, and how it really taps into what we deeply desire, what we're willing and able and allowing to claim in our lives. And it's about experiencing pleasure, allowing it, surrendering to it. We had thought we would poll for some questions. I tried, but I have to work on that a little bit, maybe starting with something a little bit less charged or something like that. But I didn't get questions, but Mina did get some questions. And now, in order to actually get the questions, she had to hop off her call. So. Oh, goodness. Hello, Mowgli. Welcome. Okay. Maybe okay. We're in a brief pause here. And I was thinking I could mention a little bit about the Pleasure Temple, which is my current offering for a group program for melanated beings to return to the sacredness of pleasure in a brave space that comes from my teacher, Dr. Lucio Rosales Mesa, who does decolonial alchemy. She talks about brave spaces rather than safe spaces. Here we go. Okay, you got the questions.
I love the question. Yeah, I really want to get them. So I feel like, the person that sent them like took time to write them. So I kind of wanted to honor them and ask them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the first one I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Your pleasure, Mayron. What is your definition of pleasure as different from joy or excitement?
So one thing that comes to mind is that joy is a great question. Joy or excitement, I would consider these, in addition to being states of being, because they can be states of being, but they're also emotions, joy or excitement, whereas I feel like pleasure is an actual state where each of these actually will have its own there's like there's something in the senses, there's something in our sensual bodies and our subtle bodies that we will recognize, and it will be a signal of what it is. So that happens with joy, that happens with excitement. Like they say how often, and I would deal with this all the time, where people talk about fear, they're scared. Being scared and feeling excitement typically has a very similar experience in the body, of sensations in the body, and then it's like what we interpret it to be. So we can have that fluttering, our heart fluttering, all these like nervous energy going, and that can be either scared or it can be excited. And for pleasure, it's something similar to that, but it'll be unique for each person. It's like you'll know it when you experience it. But I do think it's a state and not an emotion. And I think what we've been talking about, what Mina and I have been talking about this whole time, leads into that, because it's like, it's a state, but it's not like a set state. And it's like, I think of it more like the ocean of pleasure that we have within us. Now, in order to experience that full ocean of pleasure, it's like little by little, kind of drop by drop. We start with little drops. What do we enjoy? What brings us that feeling of, oh, this feels so good, this feels so yummy, this feels, this brings joy, this brings delight. Like, you can bring all of that. You can bring joy and excitement into a state of pleasure. But pleasure is so big. It's so vast, and it's that allowing more and more and more. So we start with little things, the 2% more comfortable things, the little things that entice our senses, and we have the birthright, certainly too. We have the capacity to experience more and more and more and more pleasure, and there's really no limit to it. I would say that. Hello, Mimi. I think I went all over the place with that, but hopefully it gives something to answer that question.
Yeah. It's more of a state. That's what, more of a state than an emotion.
Yeah. It's more of a state that can have many emotions in it. You know, like the emotions, I would say, are like, they're also swimming in this ocean, but it's like a state of surrender, of allowing, of just our deepest release. And as we've been talking about in our time together, like, that's not easy to get to for so many of us, because we have a lot of pieces that are like, no, this is not safe. I'm holding on tight right here. You know, so it's like a process, but we get to be in that state. We can have more in that state. There is no limit. There's no limit to the amount of pleasure that we can experience.
Okay, I love that. Thank you. There are 2 more questions that I have. Should I?
Yeah.
What practices do you recommend for distinguishing what you find pleasurable as opposed to what society or marketing encourages people to see as pleasurable?
It's a great question, and this is part of the process as we've been talking about surrender and allowing. We go through this process where we get to shed and release the conditioning. It's all part of it. This is why pleasure, as I mentioned earlier, I had thought was frivolous when I was well on a path of academics and all this stuff. Like, pleasure was, whatever. I don't have time for it. But pleasure actually gets at our deepest beliefs, our deepest limiting beliefs, our deepest experiences, our
trauma, it gets at all that because we have the opportunity to release, we can heal, release, and in order to experience pleasure, because it isn't just it's something that we have inside. So it comes down to this practice of just paying attention to what we like, what we desire, what feels good in our bodies. And that can start, like we were talking about senses, that can start with, again, I'm going to go to taste. Somehow taste keeps coming up, but just like, you know, chocolate or strawberries or whatever you like, whatever feels enjoyable to eat, like really slowing it down and savoring and feeling in our body, what does this feel like? Something that we enjoy, so whatever that is. We get to have more and more experiences of that. That gets to override whatever is out in the culture as far as this should be pleasurable, that shouldn't be pleasurable, this is what you should look like when you're in pleasure, whatever, all the stuff. There's so much of it. So it's a practice. It's like a little, almost thinking like a little daily practice of, how do I experience a little bit more pleasure? What can I do? And trying different things. It can be about movement. It can be about just deep breathing for a few moments. It can be sounding. And these are the things that I think of. But we get to like rewire and attune ourselves to our own experience of pleasure. And it has nothing to do with what's out there in the media. It's about our own bodies and our own sensations and how that feels. So it's kind of a bringing that back. Again, we mentioned before, but the self-trust, of just trusting that we know pleasure, right? It's like, we know it. We know it. It's there. And we get to experience as much of it as we want.
And I want to put you on the spot right now because
we're here.
She said, what practice do you recommend? Like, do you have a practice you could share, something really simple to help for people to distinguish or to find out what they find pleasurable?
Good question.
It's like one simple thing that they could do.
Yeah. To help distinguish what that sense of pleasure is.
Yeah, like what they themselves truly find pleasurable as opposed to what the media or society or culture is telling them is pleasurable. It can get really confusing, right? To be able to listen to yourself, have that experience with yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's two things that come to mind. One I'm going to go to, which I've already been mentioning, and I'm sorry I keep mentioning it the same, but it's what is, and maybe I'm hungry. Maybe that's part of it. Got it. For me, it's after 1, and I haven't eaten anything. But it is a way to try, right? I'm going to give the example of a strawberry. One way to do this would be to close your eyes and to take, and then to just slow this process down so much, where first you just hold the strawberry, just like a couple centimeters from the mouth, just hold it there and breathe and notice what comes in, notice the sense of smell, notice anything, like maybe you start salivating, like notice that. And then slowly, like you can do it really, like for me, it's all about slowing everything down. yes, pleasure can exist in any state, any pace, any, anything. But for me, and when I'm guiding things, I'm a lot about slowing down, because I think it allows the senses to get really, really connected, and for our senses to really get sensitized, really, And so I would just do this kind of practice of, as you have the strawberry here, and you're just breathing, scanning the body, just noticing what's there, noticing what's in the mouth, and what you're smelling, what even you're feeling by holding it, and just get closer and closer, like bring it to the lips. Just have the lips touch the strawberry. Close your eyes and breathe and notice the sensations. And then like taking a small bite and just letting it, that little bite just sit in the mouth. Again, breathing, noticing the sensations. So this is all like, this all has to do with this strawberry and the body, and it's not about anything else. So it is, as we like slow, we can do it with different ways. We can do it with smell too. But as we slow down and we're breathing and scanning the body, we're bringing in that connection between the stimulus and our bodies, and it's not about anything else. So that is a practice in itself, to connect to just what we're holding and what's happening in our bodies. That has nothing to do with, all the what's in media, what we've heard, or what we've read, what people have told us. That can all be there, but this is about getting back our own connection to something pleasurable, bless you, and to our bodies. And the other thing that just comes to me, that I just love this practice, is just to, I guide often to bring our hands to our bodies, so like heart space and womb space, or energy of the womb. And again, we're bringing our it's really about bringing our awareness inward to our own body, to our own sensations. So we can bring the awareness to our body, to our sensations, and then I invite people to make like just a sigh, just or any kind of sound, actually, because our sound, what this does is the energy of our pelvic floor is connected to the energy of our throat. And so as we do this, so I'm just gonna do like, if we practice that a bit, we can, and bring our awareness to the body and what's happening, we might start to notice this connection. Like this happens for me very quickly now, because I'm doing this and doing these different kinds of practices, but our throat and our, like the energy of pussy, the energy of like in the pelvic floor are so connected that we can actually, with this little, just a sigh, and it can be anything, it could be much more, if much more wants to come through our voice, that opens up a connection in our body. And so again, that has nothing to do with anything going on around us. It's not anything to do with conditioning, messages, what we should, what we shouldn't, what we, all of that. This is just coming back into our own experience in our own body.
Thank you for sharing your practices to do like that. Really is like, yeah, wow. That's like a new level of like awareness. Thank you for sharing those. Really
Sure. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for whoever wrote those in.
There's one more.
There's one more, okay.
Yeah. Do we have time? Do we have time?
Yeah.
There's one more. Hi Jane Monroe and hi 319 Rajiv. Thanks for joining us. Okay, cool. If we have time, is it okay to do one more?
For sure.
And the last one I have is what are the fundamental principles that have helped you move away from family, cultural, and societal conditioning into more of your chosen direction? And she's asked both of us that question, but I'm going to ask you.
Okay, yeah.
Fundamental principles that have helped you move away from family, culture, societal conditioning and move in your chosen direction.
Yeah, that's such a good question. What comes through for me is as I started taking steps, and yes, it was this was a pleasure journey. This was a sensual journey for me. That was a big pivot from where I had been heading and all of that. But as I started connecting to my body, connecting to the sensations, connecting to the experiences, as I started prioritizing that, as I started to allow, because it's not all pleasure at all, it's like all the things come up, like all the ways that I was an awareness of how I had been operating. And I mentioned this quite before, but it was a shift from operating from the shoulds, the rational thinking, this is what I should do, this is what I should do, this is what I should. That was operating full force for, like 40 years. Well, I guess from the time I was young. So it was a shift from all of that, because that's where everything lived, right? All this familial, you should do this, you should do that, like cultural, like the societal kind of pressures, all of these things was living there. Once I started giving much more priority to my body, to the sensations, to the experience, it just, that is what it was. That brought me to, oh yeah, this is really about me. I'm here in this world. This is about what's living here in my body, what wants to be expressed, what wants to happen, the pleasure I want to experience, the joy I want to experience, the love I want to experience. This is about this, and hasn't anything to do with all these other things. It didn't happen overnight at all. I'll say that. But it did happen. It did happen over time. And then it's like decisions. I talk about in my work a lot, like embodied decision making. I started to make my decisions from checking in with my body. What is my yes? What is my no? This is the ongoing process, but what is my yes? What is my no? And that just led me to here I am in Mexico. I've left a whole career and whatever. And it's nothing like what I was conditioned to do or what my family would want me to do or anything, but it's like, I get to do this. This is my choice. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm an Aries, so the thing, I tend to know the thing. I'm like, do the thing. But what was holding me back for so long was develop intimacy with myself and intimacy with, therefore, other people around me. So even though I might have known what I wanted to do, had the idea and the energy to do it, I didn't have the people. I wasn't in touch with the people who were going to support me to do it. for me, it's really been about a wound around intimacy and belonging, and getting in touch with intimacy with myself, like feeling, like learning my spectrum, shame, grief, all the different aspects of myself emotionally, and also the nervous system work. And then developing capacity to be with all of that, and developing the capacity to speak what I need to the people around me to facilitate the things I want to do. Because before I was in this, it's just me, I'm going to do everything, and it's not possible. I need support. We all need layers of support. So for me, I had to lean into and learn how to lean into and ask for the support to allow me to do the things I wanted to do in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not an overnight journey.
No. No. Did you find, Mina, I'm curious, did you find that when you started doing more of this, like you knew what you needed, or you knew what you were looking for, when you started doing more?
I thought I knew what I needed, but I didn't really know. But you just see what's in front of you, right? And you follow the next thing.
The next thing. Absolutely. Always the next thing. I'm curious, as you went on the path of that work, connecting and doing the next thing, like opened up more resources for you, or the teachers that would show up, or who would enter your kind of sphere, your field.
Yeah. So like kind of like following your nose, like developing your intuition to know what the right next thing is. It brings the opportunities and the next people that are going to help you on the path, and the people for sure. In terms of like your career or what you want to do in the world. And like that I kind of have always been quite connected to my intuition. Like I went to dance school when I was like 25. I've always been the oldest person in my parents were like, dance school? What is dance school? And I'm like, F you, I'm going to dance school at 25, and I like graduated at like I think 30, and I was the oldest. So I've always been out of my, I've always just done the things, and the teachers do appear. And my thing was, how can I be vulnerable enough to really ask for what I need deep down? Like, can I fall apart with someone and be okay? Can I find the people I can fall apart with? Can I be an absolute mess? Can I ask for support that feels really outside of what I'm used to asking for? So for me, the work was really about being really uncomfortable and building capacity to be uncomfortable, and like learning what I need, learning that other people are really important, and learning that it's okay to ask and that people do want to support you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And perhaps what I'm hearing maybe is perhaps the ability to receive, right? Like sometimes that's another muscle of receiving, being able to receive, being willing to receive.
Yeah. And I want to say as well, it's like the two things were not like in balance. It's like my receiving was here and my asking was here. It's like, so in my head I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with receiving. It's the asking, but like you can always do that. So this is not like a fluid, like this is not all like, oh, I've reached the top, like I can do this. It's not that. It's like the different parts of the thing can be at different levels, you know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
can feel like, oh, in one journey of like, oh, I've realized, it's like the journey, I've realized, which is a journey, I need this thing. Okay, what do I do? Oh, let me ask this person. Oh, they have replied. Like each little part of this journey takes a different capacity, right? And there could be different levels of capacity to engage with different parts of that one kind of thought. So it can just feel like, what's happening, sort of thing. But yeah, essentially build a capacity to be with all the
Be in the mud, the muck and the mud of it.
Yes. And pleasure, can really help build that capacity. Being on that spectrum of pleasure, wherever you are on it, really help build that.
Yes, thank you for mentioning. I do feel like it's such it is a resource. It's a huge resource. It's a huge reservoir for us. So we can allow more and more of the experience of pleasure than the other things that are happening in life. We actually have a lot more capacity to hold them, to have them not be so jarring, or like to have them not be so impactful.
It's like when the reservoir is like low, every impact just digs right in, right? It digs into the land, it digs into the spirit, it digs into the surface. But when the reservoir is higher, it's more like there's more of a cushion to be with things that come at you. And so it's like pleasure helps to build that reservoir. Anywhere on the spectrum, like knowing that you matter and allowing time over the small things over time to help build your reservoir, allow you to deal with the challenges in a different way, less impactful, but a more kind of, it's never easy, but maybe there's a slightly more ease we can find when our reservoirs are higher.
Yeah. I like that. The ease. There's someone who we meet kind of like monthly. I've done that for a couple of years now, but she had this phrase, no pressure, all pleasure. Like it came of like, oh, let's meet then, let's do this. Oh, yeah, no pressure, all pleasure. And I'm like, yeah, I like that.
That's cool. I'm like, oh my God, could it be all pleasure? Could it be all pleasure? That's like mind-blowing.
Yeah, there is that idea of, can we, so to speak, alchemize it all to pleasure? You know? Oh, thank you so much for being willing to go on this exploration.
Thank you for having me.
For bringing the questions.
Yes, it's like I love this topic. I think it's such a great topic, especially when you're like, hearing from melanated beings around this topic is such a refreshing, so refreshing, and there's so much to say.
Mhm.
And I just really enjoy demystifying the whole thing for people who are on a journey of trying to access or finding their access to pleasure. I think it's really important.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as you were speaking, I was thinking, as part of my, like, just a passion, I suppose, or motivation or inspiration is if melanated beings and if melanated women or femmes can experience more and more pleasure, like, what impact would that have? I just feel like it feels very, I guess it just feels very inspiring. That feels very inspiring. That feels very expansive.
For sure, for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Did you share about your program?
So when you were getting the questions, I started to a little bit. I realized I'll just share. This is such a good explanation of pleasure and everything. And I'll just say briefly, I will say briefly. So this is a group program. It was inspired by all the things that we've been talking about, especially helping to guide melanated beings to, as I said before, like the return to the sacredness of pleasure, to experience more pleasure in our bodies, since it's a vast and there is no limit to this as a resource, which can then be used for whatever is calling them to, whatever they want to do, whatever anyone wants to. It's not about, definitely not what about me. It's not my pleasure temple. It is a pleasure temple, but it's also about our own individual pleasure temples, our own individual connection to our bodies as a temple, and this process of surrendering and allowing more and more of the experience of pleasure. And it involves, oh my gosh, I had it up here. Of course, now I probably won't be able to find it. But I was gonna say it's, okay, wait, let me see if I can get it, because I do want to share it.
For sure. How would you say?
Oh, hello, more people are joining. But yeah, this idea of like initiation, embodiment, invitation, and integration. So it's kind of like all levels.
Say that again.
What's that?
Say those things again.
Okay. Initiation, embodiment, invitation, and integration. And really, like I was saying before about this undulation, it's like working from there is a bit of just kind of teaching a little bit, because we've got to get all parts on board in order to do this. So what I was calling pleasure portals, to have some teaching, to just talk about different aspects of pleasure, and then having erotic embodiment practices, which this is what I've been doing for a while now, but guided spaces to delve into different aspects of the embodiment of pleasure. And then sensual alchemy sessions, which would be more like Q&A, coaching in this group space. As we're doing this, like lots can come up, so it's to hold that capacity. And then the integration, incorporating integration as far as sacred grounding. I have to look at my notes. But allowing all these levels so that we're creating a space for this aspect of pleasure, something that seems so simple as pleasure, to be explored from our minds. And that's mainly to allow our minds to just stay out of it. This is not a process for the minds, but the mind needs to be engaged in it. So we share a little of that. Then we also allow for the embodiment. We allow for the group process, together, and we allow for the integration. Thank you for letting me share that. I was gonna be like, oh, I'll do it another time, but I will talk more about it, but I appreciate that.
Yes, that sounds so delicious. Hello, Giselle. Hi, thanks for being here. That sounds so, I just love hearing how you speak about it. It's like, I just like wants to melt into the chair. That's how I'm experiencing what you're saying. Like,
Oh, I appreciate that.
I can't hold my head up. I'm all flopsy. I'm just.
Oh my gosh, you're incredible. Yeah.
And when does it start?
June 21st, so on the summer solstice. In a month.
So spaciousness.
It's like, come and play in the ocean. That's what I would say. Let's come play in the ocean of pleasure and just see what comes.
It sounds incredible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love doing these with you. I'm like, when will the next one be? I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the next topic? What do you want to talk about? Like,
They're just so fun. They're just so fun and easy. I love them.
so
Bring a topic and let's vibe on it. Let's vibe and chat. I love it.
Yeah.
Fun.
And you're going to be opening up. You have a wait list now, right?
Yes, I do.
For your somatic practicing group.
So it's going to be open again. I'm going to start enrolling probably in July.
Okay.
I'm going to implement an early payment plan. So if you're interested in the Black Women Somatic Practice Group, I'm going to be starting to talk about that in July. But you can get on the wait list now in the link in my bio. And I'm going to say as well that I work with feminine spectrum beings in general. So I have one-to-ones which are open for all. And I have my Black Women's Practice Group, which is just for Black women. And I think I'm going to start doing some workshops as well, which will be open for all as well. So watch this space. I think I'm going to start maybe next month, but join the link, use the link in my bio to join my either. I'm not very good at this. The link in my bio to see my website and to join the Black Women. If you're a Black woman, join the Black Women Somatic Practice Group. You can do that.
Yeah. Yes.
Just join any kind of newsletter that I've got.
Yes.
Basically, just join something. Follow me, do something, and then you'll get to know. Press something.
Oh my goodness. So I love that. Well, I know then we'll have another one of these. We'll have another one of these sometimes, but maybe there'll be something. I mean, there's always more with pleasure. Anyway, we can we can feel into what what feels alive. What feels alive. Oh,
Something will come. Something always comes.
yes, yes, that's right. Oh. Well, thank you. Thank everyone who joined us. Thank you for the questions. So good. I could just, yes. It's like, I feel like there's something about pleasure that it is kind of like floating on water or something for me. Just like, it's lifting, it's supporting, and it's also just gets all into everything. Yes, and yes, links. I have links in my bio for my newsletter. For if you're interested in this, the Pleasure Temple, please reach out. And I'm also going to be doing a Pleasure Temple retreat in September. Yes, that's here in Mexico, to actually get to experience these practices in person, and wow, it's going to be so good. Yay!
Sounds delicious.
What's that?
Sounds delicious.
Oh, yes, thank you. All right, until next time, my friend.
Thank you, Sonali, for having me. I had an amazing time. Thanks for everyone who joined. See you next time.
All right, bye.